Hi everyone, my name is Kendrick and welcome to ENFP Mail. Today I get to interview Rasmus. So welcome, man.
Thank you.
So Rasmus, what is your exact personality type? Can you give us the full animal and
Dave or correlation. I corrected it to Ni+Ti SB C. So sleep, last, play, ISTP, basically.
consume? Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you change the sexual modality? So before you had double feminine and now it's masculine feminine. So what happened?
So the thing is that they made a shot at it during the typing process, and when going through the classes, you know, the masculine sensory matches up more, just generally in my life, you know. So I adjusted that myself, you know, but I was typed FF because that was their bet.
Gotcha. And
yeah.
What's been your experience like? I mean, how did you get started with objective personality to begin with? So
it's yeah, you know, I asked my girlfriend just showed me some MBTI 3 years ago or something, and
right.
I just got hooked on it because it's fun, you know.
Yeah.
So then you dug into the cognitive functions, then took a detour at socionics, and then you end up in OB. Okay, yeah.
You have the exact same animals as Dave, you know?
Yeah, yes.
That's really interesting. And so you are a jumper ISTP.
Yeah.
And you're very NT. So tell us your experience being a jumper ISTP. What's that been like compared to like a typical ISTP?
You know, I mean, I despise consume, so I guess that's the biggest difference. And I'm using NI since I double activated on since I NI my two first animals. I'm kind of abusing NI a lot.
You are technically a glass lizard, right? Because you have double activated of your FE. So does that mean your tribe problems is not as extreme as other?
Yeah, I don't have that extreme tribe problems now. No.
Now, because,
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So there you go.
I know. I was going to add to that question is that you know, ISTPs or IPs in general, they fear tribe hate. So do you still have that fear even though you're double activated FE?
I think I fear SE as much as FE, so I think it's an even there. You know, I predicted that SE would probably fuck up my life before FE does though. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I predicted my death to be that I just get run over by a car.
So you're also afraid of chaos then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, not really. I don't know. It depends on how you see it. Rather fear of chaos, you know. I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring the sensory a lot, you know. I live too much in the head, you know, and I don't pay attention to anything outside of my bowl.
So you're actively disrespecting the sensory then?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that, yeah. I mean, everything in life is a choice, right? So I mean, so I just take the easy path all the time, and the easy path is not to pay attention to the surroundings.
Now you have a blast second. So are you a very blaster? Like you have your lessons all the time?
No, yeah, but yeah, I guess it's not that kind of blasting, but you know, I prefer to get to a point when I speak, you know. That's kind of like what's the biggest difference? Yeah, I mean, I experience the difference between play and blast is that play wants to continue and blast gets to a point all the time.
I see. And then your blast is what is your blast? It's
NF.
NI and FE, and it's an NF blast. So it's second. So what is your NF blast like? Because it's a savior state.
Yes, and it's usually unclear, you know. So it doesn't feel like blast in the sense of like, you know, the ESTJ blast kind of, right?
Right.
It's like tips on how to handle emotional states or how to think about emotion. It's usually that kind of tips, if you would call it, right?
So it's similar to the INFJ's blast then.
Yeah, but it's basically the same, right?
Right.
It's just different human needs, maybe in
now
playing around, but yeah.
You're still tapping into that fourth function though, so it's not going to be as extreme as like an INFJ blasting about, you know, this kind of stuff. So what is your version of that like NF blast with the fourth function FE?
Good question, right? So it's FE. Yeah, I don't know what is my version of it, because I kind of think it's pretty similar, you know. It's not so action oriented blast anyhow, so because I mean this is not like the classical Ts. I guess you give like tips. It's kind of like doing something like practical oriented some way. No, it's not really that, you know. It's always something vague. I don't know.
So
I don't know. It's
do you like to talk about your feelings out loud then?
Yeah, you need to. You need to express your feelings. I guess it's natural.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put word to it, give words to it, you know.
Right. I mean, I can see you doing the NF blast right now. So I think you're demonstrating it. If anything, you also have the blast play together. So do you get that manic state where you get really hyper because of the blast play together?
Not that much though, but yeah, I'm very energy dominant. I'm not, energy dominant, I can say, right? It's I can do the joking around a lot, but not the classical chaos monkey, you know, the play blast savior running around, you know. Because I always want to return, you know, you always want to like go back to the savior, save animals asleep.
Right.
So I always want to return to the sleep. So I mean, I seldom stay in a hyper situation for too long.
Because you have the same animals as Dave, and Dave said that because he has blast and play together, he gets so hyper, especially at night. Like he's just blowing up with energy, you know. And does that ever happen to you? You never get hyper or go in a manic state? Because you know, no, because they said that when you have blast and play together, you become a crackhead, right? So, do you ever go to that crackhead state from that blast and play?
You know, I can be super talkative especially when I'm drunk, but you know.
But when you're not drunk, you
know? No, not really.
Not really, because
no, not really.
I don't know if you know Leon in our group.
Yeah.
But he has blast and play, and he gets really hyper too. Because I met him in person, and he gets so hyper, right? So, so I'm wondering, if that doesn't happen to you, I'm kind of curious how did you get blast and play together? Because you know that normally people who get blast and play together get so crazy. You know, at first they go to sleep mode, but then as the day goes by, and they say, "Oh, I have extra energy, time to go crazy." You know, so.
Oh, no, but you know, I was trying like am I information dominant? No, I don't. I mean, I kind of disrespect information as well a lot. So
yeah, okay.
So I mean, if I would go off on which one is the last one, play or consume, right? I think energy dominant is something that's more obvious with me,
right?
Which will give the plays before consume.
So I guess from the math standpoint, it just makes sense. But you're not displaying the characteristics that normal blast play or play blast people would.
Not that much.
No. That's interesting. That's do you think it's cultural? Because you know,
Sweden is more reserved country in general. Yeah.
Yeah, you're more reserved, right? So that's I was thinking. It's like, is it because you're like as a Swedish, it's not like it's not normal. Crazy.
I mean, culture is real in a sense, else people wouldn't talk about it. So I guess the average in Sweden is probably a bit lower than the average in many other countries.
What's that?
The Swedish average is probably a bit lower than the general average.
Yeah.
But I mean, so to speak, the needs would exist in Sweden as well, as because we have humans here as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess what's his name? PewDiePie is like the.
Yeah. He's from my city. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the exception to the rule then, because he's super hyper, right? So he's like, it's kind of funny because it went from Vikings, now it's like PewDiePie. That's what people know Sweden for, and IKEA, obviously. So,
Volvo.
yeah.
I read tons of weird things.
You have consumed last, so let's talk about that. What do you not consume? Do you not care to learn new information then? Is that what you're saying?
So, I mean, the other day I was thinking, yeah, I usually only consume new when together with people. So I kind of have to go into kind of play mode before I can also just consume. So in that sense, that's kind of like the order of the animals kind of makes sense in that I usually don't go consume new for myself, by myself.
Oh, okay. So it's like the typical like consume last. They get their information from people as opposed to them researching it on themselves.
Yes. I just go to people and give me the summed up version.
Yeah. Oh, to give you the summary, the bullet points.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting because I was watching one of my favorite YouTuber. His name is it's called Nomadic Capitalist. And it's obviously has consumed last because he keeps talking about having a research team that does the research for him. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not hard to research, but it's like, nope, I don't want to research. You do the research and you just tell me the bullet points, So I guess that's what you're doing then.
Yeah. I used to abuse my old colleague when I did my PhD, because I just, with web pages, I have such a struggle finding shit in the menus. That is kind of, I get lost immediately.
You get lost
on
the menu? You get lost in the menu?
Like, yeah, web pages. Yeah, I struggle a lot with that. Yeah. And usually, so they don't have all the relevant information in the same paragraph either. So it's spread out under stupid kind of bad categories kind of everywhere. So you have to search for that.
Yeah.
The information everywhere, it's so annoying.
That's funny you're complaining about information. I think that's really interesting. Because usually ISTPs, the general one, but the typical one would like obsess over information, right? But for you, you're like, no, I don't want information. Take it away.
Yeah, I just want that one. I just want bare minimum.
My next question is let's go with sleep. So, are you always processing your known information nonstop?
Kind of, yeah.
Like never ending.
Yeah, never ending. I even take walks in the morning, 1.5 hour basically, and then I'm just in my own head the whole walk.
Just to process your known information?
Yeah, kind of blasting in my own head as well. So.
Gotcha. You have let me think here. So, if you're masculine feminine versus double feminine, your NI then, would you say it's masculine NI or feminine NI?
If you look at masculine NI, masculine control, no, not at all. What's happening?
Oh, I'm having SI problems, don't worry. No, it was too dark, so I was asking my girlfriend to help me open the lights.
Okay, yeah.
Don't worry, I was having this SI problem. I realized I forgot to turn on the lights and it's still dark here. But thank you. Do you experience, so they said that if you have masculine NI, you have like a concept in mind and then you're kind of going through it and you're going to disrespect the sensory. And you've been telling me that you disrespect the sensory. So that kind of makes it seem like you have masculine NI. But if you have feminine NI, because you have masculine SE, that means you're actually respecting the sensory. So what is the more accurate one for you? Because what you said earlier is that you think you're masculine feminine, but then you also said earlier that you disrespect the sensory. So it's kind of like a contradiction now. So I'm info dominant, right? So I'm obsessed with getting the most accurate information.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the reality here?
I think the reality comes between your statements. Between your statements, yeah, disrespecting the sensory a lot. But
that would make you double feminine then. So
yeah, but you probably also observed when people are masculine control. masculine SI or masculine NI.
So you have if you're masculine feminine, that means you have a masculine SE then, or sorry, yeah, masculine SE.
Yeah, masculine. Yeah.
But do you remember facts and details? Can you remember numbers and?
Fairly good actually.
Pretty good. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there's all this anecdote of what they are going off when typing. This kind of fits in, you know.
Right.
I kind of my memory is pretty much based on ST.
Now, are you remembering facts or are you remembering patterns and concepts? What are you remembering? Where is your memory at?
Yes, mostly facts, you know. But I also remember. I remember patterns as well. I remember connections and the facts. So it's not. I can track timelines as well, fairly easy.
Oh, so you're good at time and whatnot.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
So you're not doing what Tai Lopez is doing, where he's like, it's just, you know, concepts after concepts after concepts after concepts, and then there's no facts to back it up. You go with the facts first before the concepts.
Yeah, but you know, I'm a double observer as well, so
yeah,
I use both. You know.
I know, but you consume last also, so it's kind of weird, right? So even though you're double observer, you're like a weird double observer. It's like
it feels like a single observer if you're missing.
Yeah, it feels like that. It feels like that. So how did you become a double observer then? How did they see that if you are like such a glass lizard, you know, such a an odd person?
I didn't freak out over over chaos and control.
Oh, I see. So you're pretty balanced with chaos and control then. I see.
Apparently, I don't know. If you ask different friends of mine, they will have different opinions here. But yeah.
Where is your tidal wave coming from then?
I don't usually have tidal wave. I don't know. I never really understood what. I mean, I not fully understood for myself in reality what tidal waves are.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So for me, I get SI tidal waves, right? So when I drive, for example, I put my groceries in the back of the car, like not in the trunk, but in the back seat. So when I hit, and because when I drive, when I hit the brakes too hard, the groceries will like fly and hit and fall all over the floor, right? And then I'll freak the fuck out. And then my girlfriend's like, oh, don't worry about it, you know? I'm like, oh no, I gotta fix it. So like I'm driving and I'm putting my hands behind me and trying to pick up the groceries, right? So so that's kind of like the tidal waves I have, right? It's like things tidal wave, right? So what do you have?
Shit that happens, you know, or
right? But what kind of tidal waves do you have where you're like freaking the fuck out, you know?
This is actually one of the hard questions. I didn't really have a good answer for it during when I had 1 year ago when I did a video either. You know, you kind of have to accept life, I guess. So when shit happens, it happens. When people get mad, you know.
So you don't really have any big tidal waves then.
No.
You're like that guy. What's his name? Marcus Brownlee. He doesn't have any tidal waves, right? He's just like calm the whole way.
Okay, I mean that's nice for him.
Yeah. Well, he's an ISTP like you. I think like a lot of ISTPs don't get as much tidal waves. You know, maybe. Let's see. What question that I have not asked you yet? Ti. So, if you're masculine feminine, that would mean you have masculine Ti then, right?
Yeah.
So
that's for sure.
What are your truths then?
My truths.
Yeah.
I don't have any truths. No.
You don't have like a three truths, kind of like no. How come you don't have any truths? Isn't that like the TI thing? Like TI's people have truths. Like what is your truth?
I don't think so. I don't have any.
What's that?
But you know the three truths. You know, I guess it's that interviews get thing. Right? I don't think it's a general TI thing or like a general TI. I not heard all the TI fans talking about truths either. So.
Okay, so not everyone has a truth. Not all TI have a truth.
No.
No. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. That's the first time I've heard of it. So that's kind of interesting. That you're.
Have you heard other TIs in interviews saying that they have?
They all had truths. So.
Really?
Yeah, they all had truths. So I was like, what the heck? Yeah. So. Okay. Are you sure you have TI? No, I'm just kidding. So like, Uh, okay. So we covered Ti. We covered Ni already. SE, Fe. So how do you use your Fe?
I usually use it to try to mitigate, control emotional atmosphere. A lot.
Of your tribe?
So yeah, exactly. Also try to read as well. So it's read off emotions. You get a lot of information from just reading what people's emotional responses and just act upon that.
Oh, I see, I see. So you're reading your body language, facial.
Yeah, a lot of facial. That's one of the primary things you read. I mean, I guess 80% of what you communicate is through the face and our expressions in the face.
And then you're really good at that, reading the body language and whatnot.
I mean, compared to lead FE and MS trash, But yeah, I do. It's in my stats, So it's a known world for me.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Better than the average ISTP. Your play is SF. Can you talk about your SF play?
It's very superficial. You cannot do things people like together. It's just the superficial. SF is very superficial. I don't know how that is translated to other groups, but I mean, for me, SF is superficial. And it's also connected to the place. It's just the outer world. You do things together for fun, basically. Very concrete things.
So you like the shallow jokes, that really dumb jokes?
Those are weird.
What's that?
Good shallow jokes.
Yeah, you like those. Those are really fun for you, right?
Yeah.
Do you like to watch trashy TV shows then, for to see that kind of stuff?
No, but I rewatch. I don't really watch news. I have consumed last, and
right.
consume and play still demons, So I generally just rewatch the old series I watched before.
So if you consume last, your consume is also ST, right? How does that work then? What are you doing if you're not consuming or if you're not using play? Because those are both demons. So you have are you just blasting and using sleep all day? How does that work?
Yeah.
You sit on your couch then, in this zone?
The thing is, I guess we all use all our animals all the time, right? I mean, it's not like one day go by without using all the animals, right?
Right.
I guess it's just a time distribution, basically. But I'm a lot of time in my head. I prefer to be in my head. I built a nice fortress there.
So when you say you're spending time in your head, what are you doing? Are you just going for walks and thinking, or sitting down on a couch and thinking? You're not doing anything. You're just thinking the whole time.
Sometimes you're playing a game or whatever, but you're still inside your head.
Oh, I see. So you could be doing stuff, but you're not really doing the stuff. You're really just using it to think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a way to cancel out the world. But
so sleep also means you like to preserve energy. So how often are you preserving your energy?
As much as I want to. It's I want to return to sleep. I want to be in sleep. Everything else is slightly outside of it.
Now, I know that people with sleep savior, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't like to exercise. Do you still like to exercise and whatnot, even though you have sleep savior?
Yeah, but I mean, with exercise, I mean, you can still do a sleep process while exercising.
Right. That's what I was wondering. So
yeah.
And then I noticed that people with sleep savior, they like to do the same exercise. They don't like new exercise.
Yeah. I create a certain routine, and I follow that routine. And by following the routine, I don't have to pay attention to the outside. I just follow and be in mind.
Gotcha. So you never change the routine then. It's just the same for your exercise.
That's just a last resort.
I see. So if you don't have, so it's like COVID right now, for example. So you can't really go to the gym, right? So that's the only time you would change it, I guess.
But Sweden, as I said, Sweden have a different approach to Corona. So there's never been any what's called
lockdown. You don't have any
lockdown. No, I never had it.
So how did you approach it then?
I was just continuing going out drinking as normal, to the pubs.
Nothing changed?
No, I mean there was a lot of concerts and stuff, was cancelled, and these kind of public gatherings.
Oh, I see. I see. So normal life is fine, but no big, concerts.
Gatherings. Yeah. Exactly. And the elder, I mean, like the elder care and these kind of things are more strict.
Where in Sweden are you from?
Gothenburg.
Okay, I only know Stockholm.
Yeah, it's Gothenburg is the second city. Yeah.
It's the second biggest city?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Got it. I've been to Sweden briefly. Like I was going to Norway, so I took the train from Copenhagen to Stockholm, and then I stayed there overnight, and then I took the train to Oslo. So
did you enjoy it?
Well, I didn't really get a chance to really explore it. It was just like an overnight stay. So,
okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It looks like a normal city. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't really see much difference from like when I went to Denmark to Sweden and Oslo. I mean, Oslo is a little bit colder, I guess, but that was it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's European architecture, so basically.
I think when I started traveling in Europe, at first I was like blown away by all the architecture. But like when I was there for like over 3 months, right? After a while, it started to look the same. So I was like, it kind of lost its like.
Yeah, it's just that it's a different styling.
Yeah.
But it's the same style, approximately.
Right.
Some regional differences, but I mean, it's the general concept is similar.
So I heard that the Scandinavian ancestors were actually Germans before. So is your ancestor really Germans then?
I mean, people live in Sweden for 7,000 years, something maybe.
Right.
So I mean, depends how you see it.
That's what I heard. I heard from a person that Scandinavian people are actually Germans. That's where their heritage came from. So.
But then, I mean, then we're all Africans as well, I mean, if you continue this route.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, yeah, no. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's a Germanic language. So, I mean, it's like English, Dutch, German, and the Scandinavian languages are Germanic.
Yeah, that's where the roots came from.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so if you're masculine feminine, that means you're auditory. So would you say you're more auditory, or are you more of a tester then?
No, auditory.
So you don't like test. So tell me your experience as being an audio person. So do you learn from hearing then? Like that's the best way for you to learn?
Yeah.
And are you pretty good with music then as well? Like.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Okay. It would also mean you're kinesthetic. So are you very good with like doing stuff with your hands or movements in general? Like, is that something that you?
Average, no.
Average?
Yeah.
What about your visual? How is your visual like?
My visual? You mean like, I don't know, the visual memory? No, I don't have that.
So you don't remember anything through seeing things?
No.
No, okay.
But I cannot recall images either. When I think it's just black and dark in the head, basically.
Okay, so so that means you are masculine feminine because I'm the same as you. When people tell me to recall something, I don't see anything either. So
I just know. If you ask me to describe my kitchen, I can describe it, but I don't have an image in my head. I just can describe things in it.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can relate to that. I also don't see anything, but like when you hear something though, does your memory get triggered then?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, kind of, I can connect, but yeah, I mean, I guess so. So here's like, I'm not sure how. I talked to other people about it before. That I think it's just a charge here, because I mean, most people both remember patterns and remember facts. So you both use N and S to remember, right? So it's just, I mean, it's not like you cannot remember patterns if you're a masculine sensor. It's that you remember the facts more than you remember the patterns, and vice versa, right?
Gotcha.
Or I think so. I mean, it just makes sense,
Right.
I mean, you would be like super handicapped if you, let's say, you masculine sensor cannot remember patterns. then you cannot remember anything, right? Either, because everything is connected. But if you remember connections but can't remember anything, then it's also like the whole vocabulary just dies out. I mean, it's so much falls apart if you don't have both. That's just differently charged. If that makes sense. I mean, it is how I think, you know.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Yeah. So, all right. So Rasmus, I think I asked you all the questions already. So I have 2 last questions.
Yes.
The first one is, what advice can you give to other IPs or ISTPs who are having tribe issues to get better with preventing having the tribe tidal waves? Because you don't get tribe tidal wave because you have double activated FE, right? So what are you doing right that they could also emulate so that they can prevent the tribe getting mad at them?
To go, well, I can go all SI on this and bring back one thing I did in my past. So when I was young, I was between like 10 to 14. I was afraid of like height, dark, and, you know, a list of fears, you know. So I started to confront it rather than. So I went to do bungee jump. I went to do like different like and, you know, amusement parks, and just did this kind of exposure. Go with motorcycle and these kind of things, just for the sake of confronting it. And when you see that the fear is not real, then the fear disappears. Same goes with if you're anxious about people, you just go out the front, confront it, and then you will see that the fear is not real either. Yes, that would be.
So from what I'm hearing, you're saying to do exposure therapy on themselves.
Yeah, cognitive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, my last question to you is that we have completely different functions. Do you have any questions about other functions that you don't have, like NE or FI or TE or SI? Do you have any questions about any of those functions?
I not thought about it, but yeah, I have one question. So popped up. I had some Facebook thing recently I posted, and talking about how the world. So David Chan talk about the world being an ST world.
Right.
Whereas for me, I mean, for me, it's the world is an SF world.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense that the world is an ST world.
Okay.
And I think that's my cognitive functions telling me that the world is an SF world.
Okay.
Would your world view be an NT world then? Like I'm curious.
Well, we're both NTs, so I don't know, like why do you see the world as SF when you're an NT person, you know?
Because everything in the world is driven by prioritization. What is most important? Okay. So, like, I mean, both in the human interaction and in the real world, everything is driven by what is most important. That thing is most important. That is what's going to drive the world. So it's a super SF world. What is the most important right now? Well, so the dinosaur doesn't know how they function to be able to dominate the world, to be able to get ahead, right? To dominate, you know. So the whole SF, everything is driven by F, you know, SF. In my world, you know, in my utter world. So that's why I'm curious. Is this flipped for?
Well, David Chan said that right now we live in SF world right now, but they had a chart where the world goes into phases where there's the focus changes, you know. So right now they said that the world is driven with SF, you know, with Instagram and all that, like, you know, the shallow jokes that you were saying earlier. Mm-hmm. So right now the world is SF, but in the 70s it was an NF world, right? Everyone was a hippie and stuff. You know, and then we had an NT world, an ST world. So from their perspective, it's like it goes in phases, right? In my opinion, the world is an SF world because you know, you're driven by what you like, what you enjoy in the moment, right? It's like instant gratification. It's never been about like, oh, let's go think what I'm gonna enjoy later on. It's like, okay, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat a cake, right? It's like, you know,
priorities.
Right, and that and I think from like an instinctual standpoint or like a nature standpoint, you're always gonna want what's in front of you, you know, like what's valuable in front of you right now, not like what's later, but like what's
exactly
right now. So I do agree that we live in an SF world. I'm SF last though, so so I just respect the SF, which I'm trying to change now. I'm trying to respect it more. It's hard, but I'm working on it.
But wouldn't like SF be like the deepest core for you? like what is like, you know, the classical, like the heirloom, you know, this object has value. I got it from my parents. This object has super value for me, is super personal. Would that be kind of like SIFI? Like that what is the deepest value is something SF?
Well, I feel like I'm more NF. Like inside, I feel like I'm more NF. That's what I feel, at least, you know. Like I feel like, you know, in the world, you know, we're all gonna die at some point. I was watching some videos a few days ago on how the universe is gonna end. They did a time map of like how they predict what's gonna end.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, if we're all gonna die at some point, you have two options, right? You can either live a selfish life where you can just be all in on yourself, because we're gonna die anyway, so who cares about everyone else, right? Or you can also live a selfless life and just help other people, because also, what's the point? We're all gonna die anyways, so
yeah.
you must do some good. So there's no right or wrong answer. They're both right in a sense. It's like a choice, right? But for me, I'm like, okay, well, what if there's like a slight chance that even my tiny action, like even though I'm like a nobody, I'm like just one tiny person. What if my action can help improve mankind, so that, yes, even though we're all gonna die at some point, what if my tiny action can help prolong the longevity of mankind? So at least, you know, as a species, that we can live longer. So that's kind of like my thought process, right? So I don't know if that's NF or NT, but for me, I was thinking, okay, you know what? And also, like, if you look at like the science of happiness, really, if you want to there's three ways you can maximize your happiness, right? The first one is the shallow layer stuff, the SF stuff. You know, like you eat an ice cream bar or you know, like anything that instant gratification, essentially. The second way is like when you go to a flow state, right? When you're like doing something that you really love and enjoy, and you're like so ingrained in it that you lose track of time. But the deepest form of happiness is like when you make a difference in someone else's life, like when you help another human being, right? So if you think of it from that perspective, then it actually makes more sense to be selfless, because you actually get more happiness from it. So by being selfless, you're actually generating more happiness. So that's kind of like my thought process is like.
I have a question also. Do you have to pick one?
What's that?
Do you have to pick one of them? Why not just go with all three?
Well, no, you don't have to pick one, but there's there's a ratio though. Like if
of course, yeah.
Like if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, when you're younger and like before you retire, essentially, most of your life is going to be spent working, right? So you might as well spend it working on an area that you love, because that's going to be most of your time spent, right? So at least you should be a flow state, not, you know, bored to death or you hate your life, right? And then when you retire, then you can spend that you can spend your time doing, you know, doing good for the world. Like, you know, Bill Gates, for example, he's doing philanthropic work, right? So it's all like, you know, the deepest layer stuff, because he's helping the humankind, right? So, you know, he's doing it right, and he's also maximizing his happiness. So you're helping people, but you're also doing it for yourself, from like a selfish standpoint, right? So, that is kind of like how I see it. Now, my SF is more like I have double masculine SF, right? So I'm really aggressive when my SF comes up. You know, like I talk a lot of shit, right? And that's my SF, you know. Like if I tell you what I really think about, like if I go up to someone and I tell them what I really think about them, and that's where my SF comes from, right? And like, you know, it's really offensive, but at the same time, it's kind of entertaining, you know?
It sounds really funny now.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're laughing already, because it's like, it's really like offensive, right? Like like it's really offensive, but it's so funny. Like,
you know, mean, you have to coat everything with humor. I mean, it's really important.
No, but it sounds really offensive. I never bring it out because I think it's really offensive. But like sometimes I get really like when you piss me off and that double masculine SF comes out, then you're done, right? You know, like I'm gonna say the meanest thing to you, and then you're not gonna be able to fight back to me, you know.
Okay. You know? Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'll give you an example of double masculine SF. Like one time I was driving with my girlfriend, and I was looking for parking, and then this guy started honking at me, right? So yeah, and he was like, he started cussing me out, right? So I opened my window, right? I'm not gonna say the whole sentence because obviously it's too offensive for YouTube, but you know, I pretty much told him, I opened my window, I give him the middle finger, I'm like, fuck you, and then I, you know, like, and I called him like another derogatory word, which I'm not gonna say here, you know, and I said, you know, suck my, you know, like, you know, like, you know, Yeah, I said that to him, right? And I said it in front of his whole family, in front of his wife and his kids, right? And
you're like, I don't care.
yeah, and my girlfriend started laughing her ass off, right? It was like the funniest thing she's ever seen, right? You know, and you know, it's like SF funny, right? But like at the same time, it's pretty offensive. So that's kind of like my inner world. It's really offensive, double masculine, punchy. You know, like I don't care about you. You know. Yeah. Anyways, Dad, thanks for doing the interview.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure, and you know, peace out. I'm gonna. So bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
And